Hi, I'm Drew Halfmann from UC Davis. I'm here today to talk about my book, Doctors and Demonstrators: How Political Institutions Shape Abortion Law in the United States, Britain, and Canada. So when I started working on this book, I had a number of puzzles that I was interested in, but one puzzle was this issue of abortion is often at the center of American politics. Candidates talk about it, presidents talk about it, the Supreme Court, states, et cetera, et cetera. It's always in the news. It's a big part of our elections. But in most other countries, including Britain and Canada, abortion is really at the margin of politics. And so I was interested to know why this was the case. So why is the United States so different? One hypothesis, and I think there's something to it, is about American religiosity. Americans are more religious than people in most other rich countries. But it doesn't fully do the job. Canada also has lots of Catholics, lots of evangelical Protestants. It does work better for the British comparison. You'd also expect, though, if religious differences were carrying it, you'd expect to have sort of strong differences in public opinion between the three countries. But actually, all three countries have very similar levels of public opinion on abortion. All the countries have strong anti-abortion movements. In all the countries, the public favors a right to abortion in cases of rape, fetal abnormality, or to protect a woman's health, but are less supportive for abortions for reasons of family size, poverty, or marital status. And so that public opinion looks quite similar across the three countries. So I think religiosity and public opinion have something to do with it, but I don't think they tell the whole story. I argue in the book that political institutions are a key explanation for why the United States differs in this way. And I'm going to talk about four political institutions in particular: our powerful Supreme Court, our private system of medicine, our decentralized political system, and our weak political parties. First, about the court. So in the late 1960s and early 1970s, all of the countries made abortion reforms that made abortion more available. In Britain and Canada, national parliaments responded to ambiguous public opinion and defined abortion as sort of narrowly as a health right, and they only allowed abortions when doctors declared them to be medically necessary. So Britain and Canada, responsive to public opinion, narrow definition. In the United States, abortion policy was made by the Supreme Court. Those justices are appointed for life. They were less sensitive to public opinion. They issued a sweeping ruling that surprised even abortion rights lawyers and outpaced public opinion at the time. The decision defined abortion as a privacy right, allowing abortions at the request of the pregnant woman. So a much broader ruling than in Britain or Canada. When this happened, opponents of abortion claimed that an unelected elite, the Supreme Court, had usurped the power of democratically elected legislatures in the states and in Congress. Next, I'll talk about the medical profession. In Britain and Canada, doctors fought hard to define abortion as a medical necessity that they could diagnose. In the United States, doctors had a similar position. They wanted to preserve their right to diagnose abortion. But they were much more focused on the fight to preserve private for-profit medicine. That was their main priority. So they initially supported a medical necessity definition, but before long they yielded to feminist demands for abortion on request. One consequence of this, though, is that the vast majority of abortions are provided in single-purpose clinics that are divorced from mainstream medicine, and most doctors hold abortion specialists in very low esteem. This also had implications for the medical profession later. In Britain and Canada, the medical profession defended abortion services and sought their expansion. Their abortion practices liberalized over time. They allowed more and more abortions for broader medical reasons. Public funding also expanded over time. And in 1988, Canada's Supreme Court ruled out arbitrary restrictions on abortion. In the United States, it was different. The medical profession continued to sidestep the issue. Moreover, in 1977, Congress eliminated federal funding for the poor, in part because abortion had been defined as an elective procedure, rather than as a medical necessity. I'll now talk about our decentralized political system. In Britain and Canada, abortion policy making was mainly confined to the national parliament, and it was basically settled after the initial enactments occurred in the 1960s. As we know, this was not the case in the United States. In the United States, federal courts set the broad parameters of abortion law, but state and federal legislatures work out the details. As a result, courts revisit the issue repeatedly as new laws come into conflict with court rulings. There are hundreds of battles every year. No battle settles the war because new battlefields always await. Lastly, I'll talk about weak political parties. In all three countries, strong anti-abortion movements tried to get their issue onto the agenda of the major political parties. They were only successful in the United States. In Britain and Canada, party leaders wanted to avoid the abortion issue and focus on economic issues, and they had impressive powers that allowed them to do so. Party leaders were able to choose nominees and fund their campaigns. They wrote campaign platforms, they initiated most legislation, and they told rank-and-file legislators how to vote. So tremendous power to exclude abortion from the agenda of the political parties. American political party leaders did not have the same power. National party leaders were unable to control state-level parties and individual candidates. Legislators, meanwhile, responded to funding and pressure from single-issue groups, and organized, intense single-issue groups dominated the primaries, caucuses, and party conventions at the state and the national level. A few recent trends. The Republican Party in the last, basically during the Obama administration, and especially in the last 3 years or so, has passed hundreds of new anti-abortion laws. But I believe that they're swimming against the tide for a few reasons. One is that women are gaining ground in the medical profession, and abortion is likely to become a more integral part of reproductive health care. In addition, the passage of the Affordable Care Act will have implications. It subsidizes contraception. It also encourages states to expand insurance coverage for poor people and their reproductive health care. Lastly, President Obama has appointed 2 liberal Supreme Court justices. Hillary Clinton, if elected, which I think is likely, may appoint more. So, the battles go on, and I expect them to continue. For a few reasons. First, the political parties are polarized, even though Americans are not. Well-organized, motivated activists will continue to pressure wobbly elites. Our decentralized political institutions will keep the pot boiling. In the meantime, anti-abortion activists will continue to try and succeed in enacting restrictive legislation, while feminists pressure the medical profession to include abortion services in routine reproductive care. Thank you very much.